Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we have Big Jeff with us for Big Jeff's football insights here once again. Took a week off last week, so that way Jeff could get his spring break in. Jeff, how was your spring break? Were you at the beach? What'd you do? How was it?
So it was great, but I haven't even told you this, JR, but literally the last night, me and the people we were staying with, we got evicted for the last night. We had some young high school kids do some things they weren't supposed to, and it got tied to our room for some reason, and it wasn't even our kids, and literally we got kicked out the last day. So you're talking to a convicted, well, not a convicted, to a felon. I didn't get charged with anything, but it didn't ruin the trip because it was just the last night. So it's all good.
Well,
True
we we
story.
cer- we certainly won't kick you out of the podcast. Just make sure the teenagers don't do anything to ruin the podcast here. But we certainly won't kick you out. We will be more fair than the landlords at your podcast or at your hotel or
Yeah,
resort, wherever you were at.
that was crazy. Destin area. So,
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, hey, we have an awesome episode for you tonight. We are going to go through all of the position groups for Big Ten teams, and Jeff even has some top 25-ish teams and stuff like that to talk about to compare them to. But we're going to focus mainly on the Big Ten. Which Big Ten teams are the best at producing certain positions in the NFL? This is obviously going to be one that is another NFL draft heavy episode here. Gonna really enjoy getting into this one here, and Jeff has some really interesting data for us. Jeff, is that a proper intro? Is there anything else you want to say before we get into it?
so yeah, that's very good. So this is really the second draft primer. 2 weeks ago, we covered comparing the Big Ten to all the other Power Four conferences, right? And Big Ten was clearly number two as far as producing NFL talent based on the last 10 years of the draft. So that's what we're doing tonight is for all the major position groups, we're going to go one by one, show you all the schools and how many choices they've had total, how many first round picks, where they rank nationally for the top 25 ones. And then we're going to kind of declare for that position group, here's the kings of the Big Ten. So I'm not going to call it sometimes you have like position university, not quite there. I'm going to call it the king of the Big Ten for quarterbacks, the kings of the Big Ten for offensive line. And the other thing we're going to do is take it by position group that we believe is most important to least important. So there's 8 position groups we're going to cover in order: quarterbacks, offensive line, defensive back, wide receiver, running back, linebacker, and tight end. And the other thing we're going to do is before we do each one, I'm going to ask JR, and we're going to start with quarterbacks. So quarterbacks is the first position group we're covering. I'm going to ask JR, and I want you all to be thinking the same question. Who does he think are the top 3 producers of quarterbacks from Big Ten schools based on the last 10 NFL drafts? So, JR, put your thinking cap on here for quarterbacks. Who are the top 3 producers of quarterback draft picks over the last 10 NFL drafts in the Big Ten?
Are we counting first round picks into this as well,
Yeah.
or just straight drafted quarterbacks?
This is only total drafted quarterbacks, but the information I'll share in a table in a second here, you're going to see how many first rounders per team as well. But this is keeping total across all 7 rounds, how many draft picks over the last 10 drafts,
Okay.
who's ranked first, second, third, and there might be ties here, right? There might be some
Right.
ties, but who are the top 3?
Okay. Well, if you're in the chat, you please put your answer if you have a one, two, or three answer as well. I would say number one is Ohio State, Ryan Day here recently. Number two, I would go with USC, and then number three, just kind of a shot in the dark here. I mean, Penn State's has some good quarterbacks, but I don't think they've been drafted quite like some others. I'm gonna go with Oregon, number three.
Okay, that's very good. So why don't we go ahead
Well, we
and
got
bring
Philip
up,
here saying Ohio State and Penn State for sure. So
yeah.
he's not with me on Penn State. He says Penn State's up there.
So
So
before we show the
uh,
table, I'll just tell you Ohio State is number 1. They've had 4 picks
okay,
over the last 10 years. 3 of them have been first rounders, by the way. So they're number 1. There's 4 teams tied for second with 3 picks. One of those is Penn State that you guessed, right? You guessed Penn State.
I said maybe Penn State. I
Oh,
said Ohio
okay.
State, USC, Oregon.
Okay. USC and Oregon are the other two.
Okay.
Someone asking Michigan. Michigan is not. And
Yeah, they asked Michigan.
there's a fifth team that has 3 picks over the last 10 years.
Okay, so far we've said Ohio State, Oregon, USC, Penn State. So there's a fifth team. Would that team be Purdue? No. Jeff Brom's not been there.
Definitely
Nope.
not. Purdue's had 1.
Okay. I was gonna say, did Jeff Brom do some QB magic that I'm forgetting? Sky U Pod says Washington. That's a good guess. Washington?
That is a good guess. They've had 2.
Oh,
So it's
okay,
not
very close.
just outside.
John's listing them off the nose now, not Wisconsin.
Wisconsin is among your 0 group. So there's 5 teams with 0. It will
Okay.
start, yep.
All right, let me do one last guess here, and then we'll move. We'll see if we have the answer. Um, Maryland? No, not Maryland. Don't scratch that. Not Maryland. Would it be? It wouldn't be Illinois. I don't know. Just give it to me. I'll say Maryland.
UCLA.
Oh, I should. Yeah, I should have thought of that. Okay.
UCLA. Let's see. This is fun here. I have Josh Rosen, Dorian Thompson, Robinson, and Brett Huntley. So those are the 3. So that here they are, folks. So like we said, Ohio State number 1. Now, this really surprised me. My last column for all these is going to be where if any of these teams for the Big Ten made it into the top 25 nationally. I listed Ohio State was number 1, like number 1 across the nation. That just surprised me. And
who was their pick that wasn't first round? Because they had Dwayne Haskins, C.J. Stroud, Justin Fields.
Cardale Jones, I believe, got selected.
Jones, that's right.
Let me see. Was he within? Yeah. So he was 2016. Cardale went in the 4th round.
That's right.
Back in 2016. So, there's, let's see, 12. So you could see there that Penn State, Oregon, USC, and UCLA, they're tied for 2nd. And there's 12 teams nationally that had 3 quarterbacks taken. So there's 12 nationally tied for 2nd, right? So there's a bunch of them there kind of tied together. The other thing to note, folks, is the former Pac-12 schools are going to be in the darker blue rows. And really, I was telling JR this, and we covered this 2 weeks ago. We added a lot of quality teams that produced talent very well in those 4 schools. They were the best producer of talent across the Pac-12, and across most of these position groups, they fare pretty well overall.
Who were Northwesterns in the past?
Northwestern, what they have?
They had 2.
Let's go to Northwestern. Trevor Simeon, 2015. So that was a while ago. And Clayton Thorson, so 5th rounder, 2019. So yeah, they squeezed a couple in there. I mean, as we know, if you have 0s, that doesn't bode very well. Wisconsin, you'll see in other position groups they have some strength there, so that's why they've done well. But Rutgers, Maryland, Illinois, until recently, Illinois has been really bad the last 10 years. It's just the last 3 years under Bielema they've been good.
Yeah, they had Lovie Smith. So
yeah. So an important position group for sure, but I surprised that just Ohio State was number 1. So Big Ten finished here a little bit better than I thought. Yeah, and this is a good point. This is where they finished, right? So if a quarterback played 1 year at whatever school, and then that's where they got drafted, that's where they end up here.
Yeah. Who was the one Indiana?
The one Indiana was is it Sudfeld from years ago?
Sudfeld, yes.
Let's see.
Sudfeld.
Yeah, Nate Sudfeld, 6th round pick, and end up in the NFL? Is he still in the NFL? I mean, he's made a living off of,
He was a
being a,
backup with the Eagles, wasn't he?
yeah, he's probably bounced around. I'm actually pretty sure, JR, he's still in the NFL. And think about that. That's been almost 10 years now. So think about how much money he's made. Not huge dollars, but his kids are going to private school, I'm sure.
He is not in the NFL, it
Okay.
says.
I
It
think it
says
might
he's
be
out
recent though.
right
It,
now.
it feels like it, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. I'll look up his career really fast. All right. Is there anything else you want to get to on quarterbacks?
No, I think that's good. I think that's good. So don't bring up the next one yet, JR, but the
Okay.
next one is offensive line. So we're going to do the same thing here, folks. Who are the top three in the Big Ten? And actually, in third place, there's three teams tied for third. So really, we should say who are the top five because we have a three-way tie for third place. But across the last, for those maybe just joining, last 10 NFL drafts, what Big Ten schools have had the most offensive linemen selected across all 7 rounds?
Okay. All right. Let's do. You all in the chat, let us know. Wisconsin, that was what I was going to say too, Philip. Wisconsin, we'll say Ohio State, just with the way they recruit. He says USC. I don't know about USC. I guess USC is a possibility. Let's say Wisconsin, Ohio State, uh, Minnesota, maybe, and Iowa, and let's just say Michigan.
Okay. These are
Caillou Pod says Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa.
yeah,
Everybody's saying Wisconsin, Ohio State, Minnesota.
so let me hit on some of these as they're coming in. Oh, put that one back up. I'm just going Minnesota, shockingly, only 2. They're 15th out of 18
Wow.
teams in the Big Ten. Only 2 offensive linemen. That was one of my shockers. I'm like, what? They're like a running oriented team and everything. That just really surprised me.
Philip
What
says
else we got?
Illinois is
Illinois is
higher than you
higher than
think.
you. I'd probably say that's true. You'll see in a second here. They're in the middle of the pack. They're 9th. They had six draft picks over the last 10 years on the offensive line. So right in the middle of the pack at 9th. Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa. Iowa is number 8. They're actually tied with Illinois. So it's a tie for 8th with Illinois with 6 picks. What else we got? Yeah, Sky U
I think
Pod, you got to be disappointed in your Minnesota with only 2.
I feel like they've developed better than that. Purdue. What do you
Yeah.
think about Purdue? Mish says
Purdue
long
is on
snapper you.
Sunday. Yeah. Purdue is 0. So they have
Oh
0
no.
offensive linemen over the last 10 years. Whew.
Sorry, Boilermakers. Stick to
Yeah.
basketball. It's going much better for you in basketball. You'll like the basketball channel, Purdue fans.
Yeah.
Okay, go on over there. All right. Let's get the reveal here.
Let's get it. All right, JR. So Ohio State leads the pack with 14
Wow.
total picks for offensive linemen. They're actually tied for first in the nation. So let's see.
Who's that with? Alabama, Georgia?
Who do I have? Alabama and Georgia. Yes.
Yeah.
So all 3 of those have 14. And really, that makes sense, right? Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, really, when you think about it. Those 3 are the monster recruiters of the last 10 years, right? So this is a marquee position. I'm ranking it second to quarterbacks. So just hugely important to success. The other thing Ohio State also has as kings of the offensive line for the Big Ten, they have 3 first-round picks, tied with, interestingly, Iowa. So even though Iowa was more in the middle, you could see they're tied for 8th, but 3 first-round picks. That's why you probably had the perception of Iowa being maybe top 5, right, in offensive linemen. They put out really quality people. Other things stand out, Northwestern with 2. They only have 2 total, both first-round picks. So quality. Michigan is second, though. Michigan really solid in really the last 5 years. So let's see, 6, 8, 11 of their 13 picks have been over the last 5 years. So you could see how it took a while for Harbaugh to gained momentum in the program, but he's certainly gained momentum, right? Only one first round pick though, but that is good. Michigan's tied for fourth most in the nation. And then your other top five tied for third in the Big Ten. You have Oregon with 9, Penn State, and Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, very consistent. I think we all shouldn't be shocked with that. For ever since Barry Alvarez took over in 1990, I think he took over, Wisconsin has been a offensive line factory for the NFL for sure. USC and UCLA, they're lumped together there. They're both tied with 7, but very solid there. And, a couple first round picks for USC. So that's tied for 15th in the nation. What else do I have here of note?
I think UCLA is really interesting the way that they've got some of these, 2 in 2023. They had 2 back in 2018. USC just kind of consistently put them in the league, one each year there for the most part. But
Yeah.
UCLA kind of in bunches there. When did Chip Kelly get hired at UCLA? I'm curious on how that.
Yeah. So that was more going back.
It's
UCLA.
actually
Oh,
kind of.
UCLA was the going back to those first 3 or 4 years. That was the guy who coached in the NFL, and then Jim
Yeah.
Mora. He did a real good job of recruiting from 2 weeks ago when we reviewed, by
He
team
did.
totals. UCLA fared much better than I thought, and even under Chip Kelly, they fared better than I thought. They've been a consistent producer of NFL talent. They've actually achieved record-wise probably less than the talent they're producing in the NFL.
Well, they're in such a talent-rich state that I
Yeah,
mean, you really have to try to not produce NFL talent if you're out there in California. Like
that's right. That's
so.
right.
It's kind of
Yeah,
amazing that Ryan Day hired Justin Fry from UCLA. I mean, I know they were buddies, but UCLA was producing 0 NFL talent there from 2019 to 2021. And then that's when Ryan Day hires Justin Fry. Justin Fry was there from, I believe he started in 2018, 2019, and then he gets hired at
no.
Ohio State after 2021. No, when was it?
What do you think it was that early? Yeah, I didn't think it was quite that early
I thought it was,
for
maybe
him.
not.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we know Fry, not a great recruiter, but good. We would say good developer of talent just based on what he did with the line this year. And then
Hmm.
UCLA was consistently a really good rushing team under Chip Kelly and when he was with Chip Kelly. So, so yeah, offensive line is just hugely important. Not surprisingly, the Big Ten does well here, right? We have a really good reputation for this. And by the way, the other thing for listeners, normally it's not always going to be the case, but I produce an article tied to it. I'm not doing one this time because I'm going to wait till after the draft is done and provide more updated. So I'll capture 2025 data and then write an article on that once I have the draft done. I think that will
Yeah,
be more
yeah.
interesting.
Check out Jeff's stuff after the draft. He did start in 2018 as just the offensive line coach, and then he was offensive line coach, offensive coordinator from 2019 to 2021. So in 2018, actually the draft would have been 2019 after that first year. He produced one NFL offensive lineman in his time at UCLA.
Well,
Um,
or you could say after he left JR, the one in 2022 could be kind of attributed to him, even though he left because he might have
yeah,
developed them. But yeah, I mean, it's a good point. You
just
want to
interesting.
see, yeah, you'd like to see a mark for your school, right? Given there's 5 offensive linemen, you know, it's it has the most people in any position group, right? So if you have none in a draft, that's not good when you got 5 starters per year, right?
Yeah, for
No
sure,
question about it.
for sure. All right, we want to do anything else on offensive line or move on to defensive line?
Now we could do defensive line for sure. Don't show it yet, but let me just look at it. So for defensive line, I want you all to be thinking who are the top 3 producers. The top 3, there's no ties here. They're clearly the top 3 in the Big Ten.
I would say probably just the best recruiting teams in the Big Ten, Ohio State, would USC do? I mean, probably Ohio State. I don't think Oregon really got good on the defensive line until Dan Lanning got there. So I mean, they were fine, but nothing really amazing till he got there. So I'll say Ohio State, USC, and either Michigan or Penn State. Let's see what other people are saying. Sky U Pod says Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon.
Okay. So I'm going to stop there and say Oregon is seventh for defensive line. So they're not in the top three. They've produced 6 over the last 10 drafts,
Mm.
but 3 first round picks. So they're tied for the second most first round defensive line picks. Thibodeau and I could name those if you want, but
And those
but
are all probably Dan Lanning guys.
they're seventh
Yeah,
overall.
at least two of those, one or two of those Dan Lanning guys. All right, Michigan, Ohio State. Are those in the top three?
Well, let's see any other guesses too.
Penn State. John has in here.
So that guy nailed it.
John nailed it.
He nailed it. But number one is Ohio State. So this is their third straight. So for the top 3 position groups, we're saying Ohio State is number one in the Big Ten and the most 3 important according to JR and Big Jeff. So, but you could see Ohio State's 16 picks, 3 first rounders, and number 1 in the nation in
Wow.
defensive line. Kind of surprised. I mean, I figured they'd be 2 or 3. I was thinking Alabama would be 1. So just so you guys know, Clemson is number 2 in the nation with 15 defensive linemen over the last 10 years. Michigan is 3, though. Michigan is number 2 in the Big Ten with 14 picks, number 3 nationally, and they have more first-round picks than Ohio State. They have 4 first-round picks. And impressively, they've had a draft pick in the defensive line every year for the last 10 years. And the other thing that's wild is, they're probably going to have a couple defensive linemen first round in this year's draft, and probably I don't know how many there are, maybe 4 taken. So Michigan, now Ohio State though is going to have a lot this year. So we'll see how this shakes out. Who the Kings will be once the 2025 draft is done. But both those schools are just producing excellent. And then Penn State third, and it doesn't surprise me. I mean, they continue to have strong defenses, right? 11 total picks on the defensive line, 2 first rounders. They rank 7th nationally. So very good. And by the way, Bama is tied with Michigan at number 3. So Bama has also produced 14 picks over the last 10 years. So impressive company for Michigan and Ohio State for sure.
Does Michigan have the most? I don't know if you did this for top 25 or not, but did they have the most first round picks
I
over the past 10 years?
didn't capture that. I mean,
Okay,
I've got the data, but I'd have to go in the query and run it. So I
right.
don't know that for sure. But that's a good question. They definitely have
Yeah.
most of the Big Ten. Fourth, and that, by the way, I also highlight always in green, it's like good data. If it's the tan, it's not so good. But Iowa, impressively, 8, they're 4th in the Big Ten, 8 picks, only 1 first round pick, but that ranks 16th in the nation. And then all 4, 5 through 8 are the Pac-12 schools. So you got UCLA and USC tied for 7, and Oregon and Washington tied with 6. But UCLA has had 3 first round picks, and Oregon 3 first round defensive line picks. So again, that theme of UCLA just generating NFL talent better than their performance on the field, for sure.
Yeah, I hope Deshaun Foster figures it out and it doesn't drop off because UCLA really is showing themselves to be an integral part to the NFL draft picks for the conference. Now, I do think the teams under them are going to start picking it up better. I think Nebraska's doing a better job here recently. Illinois, obviously, Indiana. I mean, that's what I think. Keep looking at all of these like position groups and everything. I see Indiana at the bottom pretty much every time, and it's just like
Yep.
that is how crazy it is what Kirk Signetti did in his first year. Like
No doubt.
he brought in dudes from James Madison who had higher draft stock than guys on the Indiana team. And I mean, not all of them for James Madison. Obviously, he developed some guys too, but still, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
just kind of
Yeah,
crazy doing that.
no doubt. I mean, think about Indiana here, dead last was 0. I mean, defensive line, no wonder why they just got pushed around for years. And you're not going to do anything without a good defensive line. It doesn't matter how good your cornerbacks are if your defensive line is not good. You can only cover a guy so long,
Right.
So now what's cool with Indiana, CJ West, he's for sure going to get drafted, right?
Yeah.
He had a great year. So boom, they're going to have one this year. And, and they had a second guy, can't remember the guy, had a high number of sacks in the Big Ten. He's returning. He's kind of undersized defensive lineman for them. I think he will
Oh,
be
Mikal
draftable.
Kamara.
Yeah, Kamara when he comes out the following year. But gotta be good up front, or you have no chance. Rutgers second to last there with 1. I'm surprised Minnesota, with only 2, and then Wisconsin with only 3. I just thought Wisconsin would have been a little better up front. They had a period of like 6 years where they had 0 drafted defensive linemen. So just a vital position group here for sure. Post draft this year, I will look a lot different. Definitely.
Yeah, I think Indiana's probably just gonna have one defensive lineman drafted this year, but I agree with you. You get Mikal Kamara, the other defensive lineman, you get some more development for them. Things could change. Work might get drafted. We'll see. What I'm looking at right now doesn't project him as being drafted, but you never know. It just takes one team to see something in you.
That's right.
Um, but but yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see.
The other thing to point out is you got this whole host of schools that I haven't mentioned that are your kind of like below average / middle of the road people, like Nebraska, Maryland, Illinois. Michigan State hasn't come up because they're not in the top 7 or 8, but they're not in the bottom 3, or they're always 10th, 11th, 12th, like in the lower half, right?
Yeah.
And so they're hardly going to come up here because they're middle of the Packers. It just kind of get lost in the shuffle.
All right. Boy, this is a comment I never thought I would see in my life. Here, Jeff. I think Indiana takes a step back and
That's
goes
awesome.
9-3.
As it,
Mish, I'm not
so
saying you're wrong, Mish. I just think it's hilarious that we're saying Indiana a step back is 9-3, and that's what John is saying. In addition to it, man, that's just that is
so
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 cool.
for those of you who don't know, I graduated from Indiana 1990 when we were consistently good back then. If we went 9-3 this year, I can tell you this: people are not expecting anything like the run we had last year. Even if we went 8-4, the majority of fans are going to be like, "Okay, this still proves Signetti knows what he's doing," because we hadn't had even an 8-4 season in over 20 years, let alone going 11-2. So
For sure. All right, let's move on to
yeah, defensive
defensive
backs. So don't
backs.
don't show it yet. So let me look. Okay, so the top 3 are clear. There's no ties or anything. So who do you think the top 3 producers of NFL talent for defensive backs again over the last 10 NFL drafts?
I would say top 3 Ohio State is in there for sure. They had a really good run there for one. They stopped a good run. Penn State, I would say, is up there. Oregon, Washington, maybe. And then Iowa. Okay, so that's 5. Let me cut that down to Michigan would probably have some too. John makes a good point. Let me cut that down to Ohio State, Penn State, and let's say, just to be fun, let's say Iowa.
Okay.
We got
Uh,
John's.
yeah.
Uh,
So I'm going to point out. I'm not going to hit the top 3 yet. I'd like to see more people give their opinion. Iowa, I will say they're not top 3. They're 8th in the Big Ten with 8.
Mm.
So 8 picks, no first rounders. That's tied for 18th in the nation. So good, right? That's if you're tied for
Yeah.
18th, that means you're a top 25 like team for production of that group. So I was good, but not great. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. Let me hit on Michigan. They're just outside the top 3. They're 4th with 10 picks. And 2 of those are first rounders, which is good. That's good for 10th in the nation for defensive backs. That's good. Very good. What else we got? Illinois, sneaky. Yeah, Illinois is 10th in the Big Ten. They've produced 6 draft picks, 1 first rounder, tied for 24th in the nation. So it makes them top 25. There you go.
All right. I think that's about all. Oh, Pitt Snipe Huskers here. He says, "I'm late. My Big Ten brothers. There's some ugly weather coming. Hang in there. Hey, hang in there, Pitt Snipe Husker. Hope everything's okay. Appreciate you watching the show, even in the heavy weather." Mish says Wisconsin could be sneaky.
Now they're not. So
No.
so just so you guys know too, my brother went to Wisconsin. I have 3 nephews. They all went to Wisconsin. So I'm from a Wisconsin family. For years, I've been saying one of the biggest problems, they have not had the cornerbacks when they're facing the really talented, skilled teams like Ohio State. They don't have the cornerbacks. They only have 4 defensive back draft picks. That puts them tied for 12th in the Big Ten, along with Purdue and Rutgers. Not good enough. They need to improve that position group. Especially, they could get away with it when you were in the Big Ten West, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other than Purdue, who was throwing the ball all around, all the offenses were pedestrian. Now that Wisconsin is out and they're playing a more skilled type teams outside of the Big Ten West, they're going to have to shore up that group for sure.
Sky Dupont says
US,
USC.
yeah, they're good. They're 7th in the Big Ten, actually tied for 5th in the Big Ten. Sorry, so 9 picks. Why don't we bring up the table here since we're going into detail? USC is tied for 14th in the nation with 9 picks, and that's good for tied for 5th in the Big Ten. So you could see. So this one is the most interesting, JR. So Penn
I
State.
love seeing Washington up there. That is awesome.
What? Yeah, I'll get to them in a second. But Penn State leads the Big Ten with 14 total picks. So they're the kings of defensive backs in the Big Ten, right? Well, wait a minute. Not so fast, my friend, as Mr. Lee Corso would say. Hate to see that he's not going to do it anymore. Penn State has 0 first-round picks of those 14 draft picks that are defensive backs. Ohio State is tied for second with 12, but they have 7 first-round picks. I'm sorry, but I would have to declare Ohio State kings. The 7 first-round picks to Penn State's 0 trumps in my book. And if I had to label a kings of the defensive backs in the Big Ten, I'd have to give it to Ohio State.
I over the 10-year period, sure, but Penn State's got 6 guys drafted in the past 3 drafts. Ohio
And
State's
Ohio
got
State has
none.
0.
None. I mean,
Yeah.
ever since Kerry Combs took over as the DC, and then
Okay.
Jim Knowles took over after him. But I will say, Jim Knowles and them, they kind of accumulated that talent and kept it there. So that's not exactly
So,
uh,
so
a
JR, I did a not so fast,
jab
my
on them.
friends, and you did a not so fast, my friends, one upping me again. Is that what you just did?
Yeah,
I,
yeah, we
I hear you.
back to
So
back.
that's a great point. I was going to point out 6 picks the last 3 years for Penn State, 0 for Ohio State. Now there's pent up. There's going to be probably 3 picks this draft for Ohio State, right? They're going to have Hancock and the starting cornerback, and then the
Hancock,
other
Burke,
safety,
Lanza,
Ransom. And yeah,
Ransom.
those will be 3. Burke. All 3 will get drafted. But anyway, the surprise was Washington, though. 12 picks, so tied with Ohio State, and 2 first rounders, right? That's tied for 6th in the nation for Washington, Ohio State. Penn State is 3rd in the nation. So this is really good. Michigan has done very well. 10 overall picks, 2 first rounders for 10th best in the nation. And they've had 1 pick each of the last 6 years, and that's going to continue for sure in this year's draft as well. So very impressive stuff. Oregon's right there. 10 tied for 14th. So there's 3 teams with 9. It's Oregon, Minnesota, and USC. So Minnesota's been disappointing in some areas, but in defensive backs, they've been really impressive. Think about that. 9 right there with an Oregon and USC is Minnesota. That's really impressive.
Yeah,
Again,
we've mentioned Minnesota has had really good safety play over the
yeah.
years. PJ Fleck has done a good job with safety play. I contend a couple years ago, Tyler Nubin and who was that other safety they had? That was one of the best safety duos in the nation. They just never
Well,
got credit for it.
they had
But that
Antoine
was one of the
Winfield
best duos.
Jr. Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yeah, and Anton Winfield Jr. Yeah, yeah.
who's
I think he
balling
was
it
right.
out for Tampa Bay, right?
And now they got Coy Parrish, and Coy Parrish is the next Travis Hunter. So you heard it here first. I saw somebody tweet that the other day. I just want to let you know that started here first. So if it happens, give the Big Ten Huddle credit, even though
That's like
Jeff's sighing right now.
when the Florida people said, "Oh, that guy did great in the spring game. We have the next Jeremiah Smith." It's like, okay, slow your roll here, people. Come
Yeah.
on.
I do think this comment from Tony is really cool. Washington had 3 Pro Bowl DBs in the NFL last year. I believe he's listing them here, but a Baker, Byron Murphy, and Trent McDuffie. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, yeah, but Byron Murphy went second round. Yeah, there's a bunch of them in here. Marcus Peters was the highest one for Tony there, just so you know. Let's see here. What bottom feeders, Nebraska, Indiana again with 1, Nebraska low. UCLA was pretty low here. What else stands out here? So defense. Oh, so Alabama is number 1, by the way, with 18. Their factory. And it makes sense. Nick Saban's his position group that he helped coach, even as a head coach, was defensive backs. That was his specialty. You can expect Bama's defensive backs to decline greatly under DeBoer. Not that DeBoer's bad, but just and I'll tell you this, JR. This is why Caleb Downs went to Alabama. I went to the national championship game and I met Caleb Downs' mother after because I hung around late after. I talked to her and I thanked her for her son going to Ohio State. And she said, well, he would have went to Ohio State if it wasn't for he wanted to play for Nick Saban because he coached defensive backs. She said once Saban retired, she said they knew he was going to Ohio State. There was no question. This came from his mom. True story there. You're learning a lot about me here, JR. This is good stuff. I'm a troublemaker on spring break and I meet, famous athletes' parents too. So
you got sources, Jeff.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Let's see. Any others we want to comment on? Like you said, Illinois, they're in the middle of the pack. Maryland is kind of surprising there lately. 1, 2, and 1. Give them their credit. 2 first-round picks for them. Anything you want to say on Maryland before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, Maryland, they're one of those middle of the packers, but they're higher in the middle of the pack usually. So it supports that narrative. Maryland has a lot of good talent, and then Virginia, DC, that whole area, they've managed to, not just for Loxley, but prior coaches, in fact, under Durkin, et cetera, they've recruited well, developed pretty well, but just haven't seen, probably could expect better results than they've had, but definitely a middle of the pack team when it comes to production of a talent, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's hard to beat top 5, 6 when you're talking blue bloods that the Big Ten has, right?
Yeah, true.
All right.
True.
So next up will be wide receivers. So that's the 5th most important position group. Now, let me tell you, I did debate whether, given the increased importance of wide receivers, whether they might be just as important as defensive backs, but I put them 5th. So, JR, there is a clear top 3. Who would you say are the top 3 wide receiving NFL production at Big Ten teams?
Ohio State, number 1. I would say USC and Oregon.
Okay, those are good guesses.
Actually, I'm going to say this exact same thing as Mish here. Yep, Ohio State, USC, Oregon. I don't know if it's in that order or not. And John's saying the same thing. I assume no Penn State, correct?
Okay, let me hit on something now. Oregon has been not nearly as good as you think. only 2 wide receivers produced. They're ranked 13th in the Big Ten. They're not even top 25.
Wow,
Goes against perceptions, doesn't it?
that does. Okay, so if it's Ohio State, USC, who would the third? Washington?
So Ohio State is 1, USC is 2. So I'm going to hold that there. Ohio State 1, USC 2. Penn State was mentioned, they're 4th.
Wow,
So
that's
guess
crazy.
3rd. Who's 3rd then? Come on
Penn
now.
State has had way
What?
more wide
Is
receiver
is
production.
is that a Michigan fan or is he a Penn State fan? Who
I believe he's a Penn State fan.
I was going to say Mitch. Okay, Penn State is 4th for wide receivers. Well, they really Penn State's had 1 first-round pick last 10 years.
Maryland. Is Maryland anywhere near the top 3?
No, they only have 2.
Okay.
They're among those tied for. To be fair for Oregon, they're tied for 10th in the Big Ten with that 2.
All right. Well,
So let's reveal it.
Here.
So let's show receivers. And number 3 is Michigan. You believe that? Michigan is 3rd in the Big Ten. They've had 7 drafted wide receivers. Now, here's why we wouldn't think that. 0 first round. So they haven't had the marquee wide receivers, right? Guys good enough to get drafted, but not, because a lot of people will watch the first round and then they're not going to watch this day 2, and then a ton of people don't watch day 3. But so Ohio State clearly number 1, no surprise to anyone, right? 13 total picks, 4 first-round picks, and they rank number 1 in the nation over the last 10 years for picks. And for Ohio State, let's see, 3 of the 4 first-round picks are all within the last 3 years. So that's the other thing interesting. So those 4 first-round picks are all the last 3 years. So Brian Hartline, thank you very much. The production of him.
I was just gonna say, if Michigan fans really want some Twitter, some Twitter talking points here for you. Michigan has just as many wide receivers drafted in the past since 2020 as Ohio State does. USC actually has the most out of anybody. But since 2020, Michigan has the same number of wide receivers drafted as Ohio State. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. And people can use information like that to misconstrue things. But what it does say is they brought in solid talent. Like wide receiver hasn't held Michigan back like over the last 10 years. Now, to win a national title, though, that's where you want to have those difference-making receivers. And that's where, they won their championship, but they had other special people in other key positions. And, oh, by the way, they had an NFL quarterback, which is vitally important. Without him, it wouldn't have got done. USC, though, really good, right? 8 total picks, 3 first-rounders, tied for 6th in the nation. Very impressive. So just so everyone knows, 2nd in the nation is Alabama and LSU with 10 receivers each. And I did an article on my website last, I think it was September, October, who was wide receiver university. And it was really between Bama and Ohio State, because I also considered NFL production. It wasn't just draft picks. And Bama has had some major guys just producing in the NFL, right? So I gave that a lot of credence. LSU is clearly 3rd when it comes to wide receivers nationally. Your Indiana Northwestern was 0. That's really bad. Illinois, Wisconsin, and Iowa, though, 3, Wisconsin and Iowa at least, 3 successful traditional Big Ten West teams, but without wide receivers. Moving forward, that's got to change. You're not going to be able to just bully, Oregon, who has really good defensive linemen that can stop running attacks, forcing you to be more balanced, and it's not going to work, right? So that's going to be vital to those teams, I think. And then in the middle of the Packers there, we haven't mentioned Nebraska because they're consistently in the middle, 9th here, right, with 3, not real good, but not real bad either. And then Washington has done has done pretty darn well.
Yeah, let's take a quick second to say hello to Doreen. Doreen says, "Hey guys, I joined the channel." Hello, Doreen. Thank you for doing that. You will get the perk of being able to listen to or join in with the call-in show next Wednesday, 8 o'clock, 8 that night. So we appreciate you being here, and Doreen saying hello to you too, there, Jeff. So we appreciate you being here, Doreen.
I always love to see you there. Thanks
All
for
right.
joining.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for joining the channel and sharing the channel and everything as much as you do, Dorian. We really appreciate it. You're awesome. That's why they call you the Queen here on YouTube. All right,
The only,
Philip.
the only thing I don't want to say, JR, too, let's talk Penn State. Last year, as we all know, poor wide receiver production, had the game where they didn't even complete a pass to the wide receiver right in the playoff. They're fourth in the Big Ten, but that's tied for fourth really with Michigan State, Washington. I mean, to do what Penn State wants to do, which is win a national title, win Big Ten, that's not good enough. 5 total wide receivers. That's just in today's game in both the NFL and college, you need difference makers, at least good receivers, and more than one, really. And so I know they picked up a couple in the transfer portal this year. Always have had good tight end play, but that's going to be important. That's why I have it a tan shade there for Penn State. I think it needs to be better.
For sure, for sure. I think it's I think it's so interesting when we got John and everybody bringing up names of current players on this Indiana team. These Indiana numbers are just going to skyrocket.
Yep.
Not so much this year, but next year. Elijah Surratt, Umar
Yep.
Cooper. I mean, EJ Williams even has a possibility. He was a highly rated recruit. He could go late in the draft or something if he shows out this season. So
I've seen
um,
lists with Elijah Surratt from Indiana as the number 2 receiver in the Big Ten next to Jeremiah Smith. So,
yeah,
yeah.
I would not surprise me at all.
All right. So next is going to be, we're getting into the not quite as important, but Big Ten running backs. For a while, running backs really got less importance as far as draft stability, right? Because the NFL has looked at running backs as more of a commodity now. We'll pull up a free agent, abuse them for 3 or 4 years, and then move on and pick up another running back. So really, but we've got one team in front and then a 4-way tie for second. So I'm going to ask for the top 3, but technically there's 5 teams here with one team in the lead and then 4 tied for second. So JR, who would you think would be amongst the top three-ish for running?
I'm just gonna stick with old reliable Ohio State. That seems to be in just about all of them. I want to say Penn State, but Penn State has had Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen for years now. So I'm guessing they've not had any running backs drafted in like the past 3 or 4 years. So that could impact them. I'm not gonna say Penn State. I'll say Ohio State, Wisconsin, and let's go Michigan. You said there's 4 tied for second place.
Yes.
Ohio State, Wisconsin, Michigan. Let's say, um, what's that? Iowa, US. No, it wouldn't be USC. You're trying to think of a West Coast team. UCLA. Let's say UCLA. Deshaun Foster, head coach there. Maybe they've got something going on. And yeah, let's say Washington after that.
Okay, let's
So
see if we get some comment. Let me make some comments while we see if others give their opinion. Penn State, I could tell you, right idea that they're not in the top 5, or they're tied for 9th or whatever with only two picks over the last 10 years, and one of them was Saquon Barkley, who went 2nd overall in 2018. So a little pent up demand for them there. Your other guesses were, let's see, OSU, PSU, Iowa. So Iowa is actually, this is an incredible stat. Iowa's had 0 the last 10 years. Do you believe that, running backs?
wow. Well, Caleb
It's,
Johnson will
it's
change that. Congratulations, Caleb Johnson.
it kind of shows that Iowa, with a good offensive line, you can, anyone can run for yardage, not be that super talented, even not even get drafted, right, and still have success. PSU, OSU,
Uh,
and Michigan. Those are all. Well,
all in
PSU
there.
again is tied for 10th, so they're not. Wisconsin is in the top five there. So, yep, you're nailing that one pretty well. Or not Oregon, though. Oregon is just like Penn State, only two
Mm,
running backs for Oregon. So they're tied for 8th also. Maryland has got 3. So Maryland's tied for 6th with Northwestern, surprisingly.
yeah.
Northwestern,
Sky U Pod asks if Bucky Irving counts. He does not because it's the school they finish at, correct?
yeah, it's where they finished their career at.
Yeah. Last one. Rutgers.
Rutgers is they're among the many with 2, so
Mm.
tied for 8th in the Big Ten. All right, let's
All right.
show it, JR.
Wow.
UCLA with the most
Wow.
running back picks in the Big Ten over the last 10 years with 5. No first round picks, but that makes them tied for 4th in the nation. So
Wow.
4 tied for 2nd. So you got USC with 4, Wisconsin with 4, including 1 first round pick. That was Melvin Gordon back in the day. Michigan's there as well with 4, no first round picks. Ohio State has 4. Their 1 pick was Ezekiel Elliott. He went 4th overall in 2016. So interesting. Only 3 first round draft picks for the Big Ten. This isn't just a Big Ten thing, though. Just people aren't selecting first round running back picks. Although I could say this year, Ashton Gianti is going to go in the first round for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Probably
anyone
top
else is.
15, possibly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. But Minnesota, that's another surprise, another Minnesota surprise to me. Only 1 running back chosen over the last 10 years. And that was 10 years, it was 10 years ago, 2015. Right. So it
Who
really
was
does
that?
go to show if you have a strong offensive line, you don't need a marquee running back to do well. Right.
Right.
Um,
Who was that one Minnesota? Do you
for
have that?
Minnesota, let me look them up. Um, let's see. Oh, where
Yeah,
are you?
I think it's interesting. Michigan has
Oh,
all 4 of theirs in the past 4 drafts. Really, Jim Harbaugh really got that going, and Ohio State hasn't had any the past 3 because Travion Henderson has, he's
yeah.
basically been like Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, where thankfully for them, they had some more before that. Who'd they have? J.K. Dobbins, Master T. I don't think Master Teague was drafted.
No, he was not
Um,
drafted.
yeah,
Before Dobbins,
because
I don't
Dobbins was
remember.
2020.
Yeah. David Cobb was Minnesota's running back, fifth
David
round
Cobb.
pick for Tennessee.
Yeah.
David Cobb. So
Oh,
don't
Trey
even.
Sermon for Ohio State. He was the Oklahoma
Yeah,
running back that
he
transferred
got
in.
picked.
Yeah. So
Yep.
who was before Dobbins then?
Let's see. Dobbins. Mike Weber got
Mike
drafted in
Weber.
the
That's
7th
right.
round.
That's right.
Um, actually, Sermons looks like, Trey Sermons, 3rd round.
Yeah.
3rd round. Yeah.
He got injured and didn't really recover after that. It's unfortunate for him. But
Yeah.
that's what happens in the NFL when you're a running back, right? I mean, you get injured and it's just move on to the next guy pretty much.
I mean, they're really disposable players.
Yeah.
I mean, think even Zeke Elliott, as great as he was only great for like 4 or 5 years, and then he was too beat up. And
He's like the
lot,
longest lasting running back probably on here. Here and he was
yeah,
drafted in 2016. I can't think of another one drafted back then that's still in the league. Um, yeah, so Wisconsin, they've kind of spread theirs out over the years. That's really cool for them. Who'd you say Melvin Gordon was in 15 or 16?
yeah,
Or
that
no?
was in 16. Yeah.
Yeah, 16.
Uh, um, let's see, Wisconsin. Derek Watt actually as a fullback. Um, Braylon Allen, which was just last year to the New York Jets in the 4th round. Jonathan Taylor. Just think, as good as Jonathan Taylor has been for Indianapolis, 2nd round pick, he went 41st overall. For that dude, I mean, if Jonathan Taylor would have came out 10 years earlier, he'd have been like the 10th pick in the draft overall in the
Yeah.
1st round.
He would have
I
been.
mean, it's amazing how that position group has just completely changed as far as how the NFL treats it. Doesn't mean it's not important. It's just they just can use free agency to get a good running back, right? And you don't have to
Hmm.
expend that draft capital. It's not a premium position, so they don't spend it unless it's a unicorn type guy like a Barkley or a Zeke Elliott.
All right. I do think
Um,
we need to mention before we move on, and I know we'll move on here in just a second, but give some praise and admiration to Northwestern and Maryland there, both with three. Northwestern kind of quietly producing guys into the league, and then Maryland had those three straight guys in a row in 19, 20, and 21. Give them some praise.
24. Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's Anthony McFarland Jr. for Maryland. Um, Ty Johnson, a 6th round pick in 2019. And then Jake Funk. I don't even remember that guy.
Jake Funk.
7th round pick. So
I gotta be careful saying that one, or we'll get the explicit tag.
that's right. I might get kicked out of another thing beyond a hotel room. All
Yeah.
right. So let's go to next. So second to last, we've got linebackers and then tight ends. So linebackers is second to last. Um, the top three are clear. So who do we think are the top three linebacking producing teams in the Big Ten over the
All right.
last years?
You guys in the chat say year three while I try my best here. I'm not going to be very good at this one. I will say Ohio State because I see every time Penn State is linebacker U, so I feel like they need to be up there. And then let's go. I don't
I,
think a team like Wisconsin or somebody like that would get it because I don't know if they've had the athleticism on the defensive side of the ball to get their guys drafted as much. But I could see a team like a Maryland or a USC. Maybe they've not had the best defenses, but they've had athletic guys. Maybe a UCLA. I'll go with Ohio State, Penn State, USC. I'll kind of go top programs there that's been lately. Pitt Snipe Husker, we don't change the graphic because we're trying to guess them first, and then we'll change it. So we'll reveal it here in just a
we're
second.
we're interested in your views. So just so you know, Penn State is tied for fifth, so they're outside the top three. They've had
Okay.
four linebackers, and that did surprise me. That was part of my notes. They were linebacker university, but it's been a little bit slimmer for sure the last 10 years, although 4 picks puts them tied for 12th in the nation. So still
Hmm.
good, right?
Yeah.
Still good. And people are playing less linebackers than they used to, right? It used to be three linebackers. Some could go with a 3-4 lineup. Uh, Ohio State, you could argue, has two linebackers starting. So that's another difference, too, why you're going to see linebackers less. Um, so
Well, yeah,
Michigan,
and if you're playing the 3-4, you're automatically going to have a better chance than if you're playing the 4-2. So
yeah, yeah. Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin. That's a good guess. And I can tell you one of these is the clear leader. Let's see if anyone else guesses before we show it. All right, why don't we show it? Go ahead. So the leader by
uh,
far. Oh, next one. Michigan, the clear leader, 10 total picks, 2 first-round picks. In fact, there's only been 4 first-round linebacker picks over the last 10 years coming from Big Ten schools. And that includes the 4 Pac-12 schools for all 10 years. So Michigan, in fact, other than Ohio State being way out in front for wide receivers, this is the other position group where a team is really clearly distanced themselves, and that's Michigan. I figured they'd be top three, JR. I didn't imagine them just being this clear leader like they are, but really impressive. It's number 2 in the nation, in fact, in linebackers. Guess who's number 1? Alabama. Alabama's number 1 with 13. Not surprising, right? But
yeah.
Wisconsin, so yeah, they've had their share of linebackers for sure. That's where they've been strong. If anything, Wisconsin too weak on defensive backs as they need to be, and needing to be a little bit stronger defensive line. But linebackers been their strength of their defense for sure. Um, Ohio
Yeah,
State is
I
third.
underestimated the Wisconsin there. I thought maybe their athleticism lately, but they had a really good run there from 17 to 2020. It looks like so. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. And then impressively, three of the Pac-12, former Pac-12 schools, Oregon with 5, Washington and UCLA with 4 each. You know, those two are tied for 12th in the nation. Oregon is 9th in the nation. So Big Ten is strong here. Minnesota, Penn State also are lumped in with those teams with 4 picks, which is good for 12th in the nation. And Penn State and Iowa with 2 first-round picks as well. So that's good stuff. On the bad side was 0. Illinois, Nebraska, Michigan State, and Rutgers, all with 0 picks. Shockingly, Indiana with 2. Yay, Hoosiers.
Well, I think this is probably the Big Ten's best position group, you would say, right? I mean, half of the conference in the top 12. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty doggone good.
Yeah. And you think about it, it makes sense. If the Big Ten is run oriented, you better have good linebackers, right? Defensive line, I would still argue, is even for stopping a run game is most important. But
Right.
then next is linebackers. So totally makes sense to me at least.
For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
We're a little hour over. One of these times we're going to keep it under an hour, but this is so compelling. We know we need to keep it going. We have our final position group, tight ends. Not saying it's not important, but tight ends. So JR, oh boy, we've got 4 teams tied for first place in the Big Ten. So 4 teams are tied. Who do you think those 4 are, JR?
Well, I'll go with my top 3: Iowa, Penn State, and Ohio State. I just keep throwing Ohio State in there. They seem to be in the top 3 for all of them. So
Yeah.
Iowa, Penn State, Ohio State, and then if there's a wild card in there that I might add, um, maybe. I'm curious what the chat is saying. They're agreeing with me. Illinois, Philip says maybe. Sure, I'll go Illinois. I'll say Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Illinois.
Okay.
We
We'll wait
got
for more to come in, but Illinois is
uh,
now they have 1, but that just came last year. So maybe that
uh,
that person with that recency bias there, but only
yeah,
1 for Illinois.
Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan there.
So Wisconsin is tied for 7th. They've had 2 tight end picks. You would think they'd be a little better. They just don't have a passing game is the
Yeah,
problem in
that's
general.
true.
So they are
Uh,
outside
Larry says Iowa. I'm gonna skip that
Iowa.
one because I don't think you have anything to say on that one.
Yep.
It's probably in the top 3. Oregon. We were talking about a little bit about Oregon beforehand. Tell us Oregon here.
Oregon is one of 3 Big Ten teams with 0 tight ends
Wow,
taken in the last 10 drafts. Those 3 are Oregon, Northwestern, and Nebraska, 0 tight ends drafted.
that's pretty crazy. A lot of the same
So,
answers
Jack,
here.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of
All right,
fun.
let's go to it. Let's go to it.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. So, 4-way tie. So, uh, we have Iowa, Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, all with 5 total picks. So, those 4 are tied for first. I am awarding, though, kings of the tight ends to Iowa, though, because of those 5 total picks, 2 were first round picks. They had, and this is what's crazy. Both of them came in the same draft, 2019. TJ Hawkinson, number 8 pick overall to Detroit, and number 20 overall pick Noah Fant to Denver. So 2 first round picks in the same draft. But those 4 schools, that's tied for 3rd in the nation. And then you have Washington and UCLA with 4 each. That's tied for 8th in the nation, and that's 5th and 6th in the Big Ten. And then you can see, with 2 picks, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Purdue, but that's still tied for 17th in the nation. So pretty strong here. Not surprisingly, the Big Ten, tight end is going to be important for blocking. So producing those for the NFL only makes sense.
Yeah,
So
I don't think this is gonna change much after the draft because Tyler Warren's gonna be a first round pick, most likely. Colson Loveland gonna be a first round pick for Michigan. Iowa will most likely get Luke Lachey drafted, but he's kind of been going down ever since the season. Thomas Fedone. Fedoni. Is it Fedone or Fedoni? He's most likely gonna get drafted, and then Ohio State does have G. Scott, but he's so far down there. I don't
I have
know
a
if he'll get
feeling he'll go
drafted or
free
not. He
agent.
could be
Yeah.
he's one of those guys that could be like a late seventh round pick and benefit from like the championship culture guy that you bring into the locker room and see how he does.
Yeah. The other thing to note, number one in the nation, tied with six. First one, you won't be surprised, Georgia, right? Georgia's
Yeah.
really put out Brock Bowers and all that. But Notre Dame is tied with Georgia with
Notre Dame
six
makes
for the last
sense.
10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Notre Dame makes
so that's
sense.
good. So yeah, so
How
that
many
so that's it.
how many
Yeah.
teams in the nation are tied with 5? Do you know that?
I'd have to bring that up.
Okay, it's fine.
Um,
Don't worry
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
It's fine.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Probably a decent number though. Usually when you're talking that many, but
yeah. Uh,
actually, we would know that we could do that. Two, 3, 4, 5. There would be five, the two others, because if Washington's tied for eighth, that means there's two others tied for third. If my math is right, I went to Indiana, so if it's not, then blame it on the Hoosiers.
I'll go
Yeah,
yell at the math department for you. It's right down the road
yeah.
from me.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
Oregon's gonna get their first tight end drafted most likely. Terrence Ferguson could be about a third, fourth round pick, maybe. We'll see what happens. But Oregon, you should get your first tight end, and I don't know when the last time they had a tight end drafted was, but been a while.
yeah, more than 10 years ago. So that's it. So this is a good draft primer. I know, JR, we're going to have a.
Say, do you want me to
Oh,
do the final slide?
oh, that was it. Big Ten tight ends is the last.
Oh no, the this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good point. So this was a little summary slide of how, if you took each position group, offense and defense, you can see here who was first and all the way through. Since we have ties, I added beyond the top 5, 6, 7. But Ohio State coming in 4 of the 8 categories, they came in first. You got UCLA surprise first at running back. Penn State first in 2 of them, tight end and defensive back, and then Michigan as kings of the Big Ten and linebackers. So, but Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, your blue bloods are just dripping across all these top 5-ish things. But UCLA, look how many times UCLA appears in there, right? I mean, just keep on going back to UCLA, and then I'd mentioned this, Iowa, from 2 weeks ago, Kirk Ferentz, I mean, he's been producing better in NFL talent the last 3 or 4 years than he did the prior 5 years. So he's not, really declining in production, if you will. He's still staying really strong. I don't think he needs to retire from a production perspective. You could only argue I'd like to see a more change in philosophy and offense so that maybe we can raise our ceiling. I could see that, but as we've learned from Nebraska, you can try to raise your ceiling and sometimes the floor falls out, right? So you got to be careful with that. But this is what kind of the top teams look like. And like I said, we're going to do, after we get the draft, I'll produce an article kind of detailing this and updating these tables. And JR, next week, as drafts are being made, I'll reference a lot of this material and saying, yeah, remember that this school's really strong. So this is not a surprise that, someone from the offensive line got drafted for so-and-so team. So,
Yeah, this will be really interesting to reference during the draft next Thursday. Just trying
Thursday,
to
a week
remember.
from tonight.
Yes, week from tonight, join me and Jeff and all of our guests. We'll have guests throughout the night for the draft. Zach has already agreed to come on. We'll get casual Big Ten. I'm sure we'll get Sonny from Locked On Illini if he's available that night. All the people that you enjoy that you've seen here on the Big Ten Huddle. Eric's not been on in a while. I'm sure Eric will make a visit after his call-in show. They typically have a call-in show on Thursday, so maybe he'll come on right after that's over. But yeah, so it's gonna be a fun time. Jeff and I just kind of chopping it up with people as we watch the draft. We won't be able to put the draft obviously on YouTube because that would flag us down. But you can watch the draft or at least stay updated with us throughout the night, and we'll just have fun talking together, and we will make sure to celebrate when all the Big Ten guys are drafted. That'll be a good time.
Yeah, and just to remind, so just like my content, follow me at Big Jeff's FT Ball on X, and then I've got a website, bigjeffsfootball.com, where I post a lot of this detailed analysis. Right, this is Big Jeff's Insights on Thursday night, where we kind of go deeper, but we look at numbers, so we're not just going by perceptions and everything. It's like, what do the numbers tell us? And that kind of cuts through some misperceptions, but it also maybe reinforces perceptions in some cases. So it's kind of fun to do, and hopefully you all find this very compelling. And make sure you sign up for the Big Ten Huddle and follow us on YouTube and all that, right, JR?
For sure, for sure. Jeff, I do have one challenge for you as we go through these things. Our guy Pit Snipe Husker says no Husker mentions on the list. Fair enough, but he's upset about it, and I get it, Pit Snipe Husker. So Jeff, your challenge is, can you find some data that has Nebraska up near the top? Not necessarily NFL draft data, but just data in general. We'll try to get you some data for Nebraska here, Pit Snipe Husker.
I won't be looking at winning percentages of games with less than one score, but beyond that, maybe. This doesn't include basketball, does it? Because I heard you guys won something pretty big recently. What was the name of that, JR, again?
The Crown.
Yeah, I'm kidding. I knew it was that.
Oh man, yeah. I did a couple episodes on the Crown, and none of them did all that well. So I was like, well, if Nebraska fans aren't going to watch it, I'm not going to talk about it. So I did a couple episodes, and I was like, I'm done with this. So
I think Nebraska's on the right track, though. I really do. Rule is for sure a good coach, for sure. And so a lot's going to depend on schedule, as it does with all these Big Ten teams, right? What does your Big Ten schedule look like? Do you get a easier schedule so you could have an Indiana-like season, or do you get a Wisconsin-like schedule where it's going to be hard for them this year to win 7 or 8 games?
Philip has an interesting idea here. He says attendance percentage for Nebraska. They do have their
consecutive I might like an attendance one we'd have to do. I might do a TV ratings one sometime. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they fare well
if you can get something like that, that would definitely put the Cornhuskers there near the top. So I love when Husker types in the all caps.
How nice fans are index or something. Could that be done? Like index of how nice fans are?
How many fans can we interact with that are nice to us? Yeah, for sure. All right, Jeff, great episode. We appreciate you being here. Everybody go check out Jeff's stuff on Twitter. Big Jeff FT Ball on X, bigjefffootball.com over there. Jeff puts out a lot of good articles, a lot of good stuff. You'll enjoy the long form articles and everything over there and be a smarter fan because of it. And then also check us out here on Thursday nights. Next Thursday, like we said, NFL draft special show. We will talk all things Big Ten. There should be a number of Big Ten players drafted in the first round. A lot of Michigan players, couple, the Minnesota offensive tackle could go, a number of Penn State guys as well. So should be a fun time. So anything else, Jeff, before we got to here?
No, that's it. Thanks everyone for joining, and look forward to next week. Always exciting when college football meets the NFL for the draft. You get both fan bases locked in on it.
Should be fun. All right, everybody. We appreciate you being here. Have a good one. Zach and I will see you Tuesday. No show Sunday for Easter. We will see you on Tuesday. Have a good one.